welcome. Welcome back to Toronto.
It's great to be back.
Thank you.
So, Aaron, you mentioned before that you got the inspiration when you read the book Molly's Game. What compelled you to take that book and adapt it into film?
You know, I really got the inspiration. I loved reading the book. It's a great read, and I recommend the book to everybody. But I really got the inspiration when I met Molly Bloom. I read the book, and then I met Molly a few days later. And our first meeting was just an hour long. She knocked my socks off. She is simply, I've never met a person like her. She is one of the smartest, most creative, one of the strongest, really one of the funniest people I've ever met. It was meeting her, discovering the story that wasn't in the book, discovering the reasons why she left certain things out of the book, where I knew right away I didn't know what the movie was going to be, but I just had a feeling about it, and I knew I wanted to do it. You can't write a feeling, so there was a lot more work ahead. But I knew even after that 1 hour meeting that the thing that I had planned on doing next, I was no longer going to be doing next, and that this is what I was going to do.
So you were talking about you often talk about like the art of casting or the pitfalls that can happen with casting. You know, at what point did you see the powerhouse that is Molly Bloom and you thought of another powerhouse, Jessica Chastain?
Okay, well, they say that, someone once said that casting is 90% of the battle. I think whoever said that was dramatically underestimating the importance of casting. For this part, which is not for beginners, okay, it's this actor was going to have to strap this part on their back at the very first moment of the movie and not drop it until the end credits roll. It was there was nuance to it, strength, like I said, this very interesting sense of humor, a lot to it. And what you needed was one of the finest actresses in the world. Now, none of them were available, so I went to Jessica. Jessica fit that bill like no other. And honestly, it wasn't a matter of deciding, is Jessica right for this part? It was a matter of wooing Jessica to get her to put her considerable reputation into the hands of a person who had never directed a movie before.
So, Jessica, you see this script, you see the book that is, you know, and the living person that's based on it. How do you start approaching it? You're known for, you know, meticulous research and incredible work ethic. Looking at you on screen, you're the perfect role for it. So tell us how you attacked it with the precision that is Chastain.
You know, in the beginning, I will say that I probably was similar to the scene that Molly has with Charlie, in that I absolutely judged Molly before I met her. I found out that Aaron was doing this film about Molly Bloom. I Googled Molly Bloom, and I thought, okay, all right, I see what this is. And I read the script, and I talked to Aaron, but I thought, there's something else going on here, and met Molly. And the more time I spent with her, the more I really started to understand the position that she had been forced to be in. She went from competitive sports where the rules are very clear. If you're fastest, you win. To all of a sudden in an industry that is traditionally male dominated, and they made all the rules. They told her how she needed to dress, ugly shoes, as her boss says in the beginning of the film, and then her livelihood is dependent on whether or not they feel she's giving them enough attention, or on their egos. And I had a lot of empathy for her because of that. And so I started to research poker. I went to some New York games and watched the guys that actually played in Molly's game, watched them play, and mostly talked to Molly and Aaron.
So often you talk about in your craft that kind of tension of kind of going in between, or there's within the character themselves, there's some kind of tension. So would you say it was that? It was like the rules and the chaos and the control and the lack of control?
Absolutely. I love characters where two different things are playing at the same time. In the beginning of the film, Molly in some way is saying goodbye to who she is. And she is putting on a persona of something else to be accepted by a group of people. At the end of the film, she's made this long journey, and at the end of the film, she says, you know what? I'm going to do what I know is right for me. And everyone can disagree with me. Everyone can think I'm making a mistake, but I am who I am, and I am making this decision. And I like that little tension that feeds through her whole journey, and her emerging at the end of the film, having actually gone back almost to who she was at the beginning of the film, but now the more wiser. She's very pure when we first meet her. And I know that Molly, no matter what happens to her, no matter how many times she gets knocked down, she's just going to stand right back up. And I have a lot of admiration for people like that. It's the underdog story.
Aaron, you're known as, you would think about your writing style and have a defined kind of sense of what your writing style is. How would you describe your directorial style?
I'll let you know 5 movies from now, I think. I'm not sure I have a directorial style. I had a very clear idea of what the style of this movie should be, Molly's Game, which is that, first of all, you should know I have really no visual sensibility at all. I hear movies more than see them. So I relied very heavily on our cinematographer, Charlotta Christensen, who is a wonderful cinematographer and also wonderfully patient with somebody who doesn't have any visual sensibility and who in 25 years of doing this has picked up none of the science of filmmaking at all. But I did tell her that I had a strong sense that the present-day scenes, that the movie exists on 2 different planes. One in present day, Molly gets arrested by the FBI, goes to New York, has to hire a lawyer, hires Charlie Jaffe, Idris Elba, and they have that journey together. In the past, Molly does the worst thing you can do. She tells God her plans. I'm going to make the Olympic team right now. When I get to the Olympics, I'm going to beat the Austrians and the Swiss. I have a legitimate shot at the podium, and then I'm going to Harvard Law School. And she has no idea that waiting for her 100 yards from the finish line is this frozen stick that's going to send her life in an entirely different direction. And so in the past, that happens. She goes to L.A., the poker game. She goes to New York. The FBI raids the game up the street, and she gets out of town. So I told Charlotta that I have a very strong sense that in present day, these scenes should be shot fairly conventionally. It doesn't mean I don't want them to look beautiful, but there's a tremendous amount of language in these scenes, and we're going to be where I'm always most comfortable as a writer, inside 4 walls. I like just writing people talking in rooms. We're going to be in there, and I don't want anything to distract from what the actors are doing and saying. However, in the past, when we're skiing, playing poker, those kinds of things, it should not be literal. I want to get as much material as possible to go into the editing room with and be able to cut together exciting skiing sequences, exciting what's exciting about the poker scenes is we never care who wins or loses a hand of poker in this movie, but I needed to make poker look exciting, and it's not. If anybody's ever watched poker on ESPN, it's the world's worst spectator sport. We need to make it seem cool in this movie. So it was a direction like that.
And a collaboration with the creative team.
A collaboration not just with Charlotta, but then we have had a trio of editors on the movie: Elliot Graham, Alan Baumgarten, and Josh Schaefer, who I have to say really took the film to the next level. It was, much of it, just if you think about the opening sequence and the way that's done, much of that was scripted. Some of it was Elliot Graham doing what I love when an editor does, when I've worked with editors on television, when they say, "Listen, I've tried something. Can I show it to you?" So it was then that when Molly in voiceover says, some of them said it was losing the Game 7, Elliot would show us a shot of somebody losing in Game 7. I thought, I love this. Now we're really moving. So my directorial style is saying yes to really talented people when they have an idea.
Smart. It's a good play. So, Jessica, you did deep collaboration with Idris because there are some incredibly intricate dialogue-driven scenes, which I'm sure was a shocker when you knew that you were working with Sorkin. What was the collaborative process and what was the rehearsal process like between the three of you and then you and Idris?
We mostly had a virtual rehearsal process because of schedules. We didn't have time to all be together and rehearse before shooting. So Idris and I were on set, and we're like, okay, we're about to jump into this Aaron Sorkin dialogue, and we did 45 pages in the first 6 days. And once you guys see the film, you'll understand why every once in a while, I just start hitting my head against the table to try to remember. Anytime we weren't shooting, we were just running lines. We were trying to make it, without inflections, we were just trying to make it second nature for us. And actually what worked well about that is Charlie and Molly are meeting each other for the first time. And they're both judging each other. And they both kind of feel like, in a way, someone who's been put upon. And for us to come into the filming not really knowing each other and feeling like, how are we going to get through this scene? And then finding the trust in each other as actors at the same time the characters start to trust each other. It was actually a little magical thing that happened. That stuff like that happens in film, when the reality mirrors what's happening with the characters.
And I think that it also, first of all, as Jessica said, there was, to say that there was limited rehearsal time is to, I think, exaggerate the amount of rehearsal time that there was. So Jessica, Idris, and I had to find other ways of preparing to do these scenes where the most important thing is that you come in prepared, that you be able, when you have a 7, 8, 9 page scene that's just words, again, two people talking in an office, that you be able to casualize all this language so that it doesn't seem like what you were working on was memorizing your lines. Because what happens then is you start to do a lot of acting to cover the fact that you're giving yourself a split second more to remember what your next line is, and it becomes operatic, and if I'm the one who has written it and that happens, it's unbearable to watch. But the stuff that I write goes bad faster than milk if it's done in that high dudgeon way. So if Idris and Jessica had been even a little bit less prepared than they were, the plane never would have gotten off the ground.
So we have a packed room here who I'm sure are eager to ask you some questions. So we're going to throw to the crowd first. Yep, to the first question.
Bruce Kirkland, the Toronto Sun and Post Media News Network. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
If one assumes this is kind of a cool feminist crime caper, then, and I do, then the moral high ground that's in Molly Bloom's life and now in this film becomes even more intriguing. The fact that at a time we live in an era where everybody seems to sell everyone else out, starting in the White House, but she doesn't. That's intriguing. Can we talk about the moral high ground and the kind of gift that gives people?
Honestly, I think you've just articulated why I was so turned on by the idea of writing this, because we live in a time when people sell each other out. The rest of us don't seem to mind that just happened. We're not calling the seller out. And Molly, with no sense at all that, I'm going to do something heroic right now, it just came absolutely naturally to her not to do the wrong thing. In other words, I was talking to somebody who didn't realize that she was a movie hero. And in fact, for about 2 years, Hollywood had kind of been chasing Molly's story because there are a lot of shiny objects in there that seem, the poker, the women, the tons of money, the powerful men, all that. And they were talking, we want to turn all this into a cable TV series. We want to do this with it. The offers that Molly talks about in that scene with Charlie, and I don't know if I'm talking to people who've seen the movie or not, when she says that she got an offer from Treat Magazine, that she got an offer from this company that owns video poker machines, that she got 5 offers from Hollywood that she kind of turned out. That's all true. And these weren't, by the way, schlocky people making these offers. These are all names you would recognize who were talking to Molly about doing it. A woman who is in deep, deep trouble financially, not just financially, but how exactly is she going to jumpstart her life again at 35, 36, she's now 39 years old now, with one thing on her resume. I ran an illegal poker game for a really long time and pled guilty in federal court in a mob indictment. So will you interview me for this job, please? This woman who's in that kind of trouble is saying no to what I'm assuming was a lot of money that she was being offered. To say nothing of fame, which nowadays is even more attractive. The more I talk to Molly again, the more I realize this is a movie hero. It's a movie hero I want to write about. She doesn't know that she's a movie hero, and that's very appealing to me.
Does Jessica have some thoughts on that?
I agree.
Hi, it was Lauren Veneziani, WBAL-TV, NBC, Baltimore. We saw the movie last night. I loved it so much. Congratulations to you both. You don't have to worry about being a first-time director. It was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Jessica, I know that you met the real Molly Bloom. I was wondering if there was any presence of her on set at all, and if there was, does that intimidate you a little bit?
Molly, as in the movie, we find out she's not allowed to come to Canada. Aaron was very helpful in getting her a 48-hour pass to come to the premiere last night. But so when we were on set, we filmed the movie in Toronto. She couldn't come. I had her on text messages, and I could call her anytime, and she was very open and available. But actually, I think at the end of the day, it's probably for me more helpful for her not to be on set, because I had to believe when I was acting the part that I was Molly. And to see her there is always a reminder of like, oh yeah, or how is she holding her hand, and I'm not doing that, or it's a reminder that I'm not playing that character. As an actor, when you're playing anyone, alive or dead, you have to do whatever you can to study them, to their mannerisms, their voice, the look, as much as you can, but then also too, you have to create your interpretation of that. And that's what separates, I guess, biopics and films from documentaries. And so for me to have her there, I think would have been very distracting, especially for my confidence.
She also knew and understood for that very reason that she knew I wasn't going to allow her to. I wasn't going to ask Jessica to play Molly in front of Molly. And so even scenes like, as Jessica said, because she pled guilty to a federal crime in the U.S., she is not allowed, she's not welcome in Canada. But the scenes that we shot in like Jessica's scene with, Molly's scene with her father, Jessica and Kevin, on the park bench at the end. We shot that in Central Park in New York. I would never have asked Jessica to do that scene in front of Molly. That would have been unfair, and I thought if Molly wants to come to the set, she can watch maybe the 13-year-old version of her ski or something, and the two of them can have fun skiing. But as it happened, all Molly, I'll tell you what Molly did do. She sent a whole bunch of cookies to the editors that I just named, with a note saying, "There's more where this came from if you cut my brother out of the movie."
You mentioned that Molly and her family were in the cinema. Did you get a chance to talk to her after the premiere?
Yeah, Molly and her family saw the movie for the first time last night. The way I did not think that that's how she'd want to see it. I assumed that we would get a private screening room for her and for her father and the rest of her family, and that's how they would see it. And she decided, and they decided, that they wanted to experience it as moviegoers. What's this really like to sit in a movie theater and watch this? And I talked to them. I've been in communication with them, but then I talked to them for a few minutes before all the cars headed over to the theater, and told them that nothing could possibly prepare them for what was about to happen to them. That I certainly don't have any experience with this. But after the movie, they were as emotional and as effusive as can be, both Molly and her father. And for me, if that's all that had happened, Dayenu, as my people say, it means it would have been sufficient. It would have been enough if that's all that had happened. But we also get to do this.
Columbia. I'm sorry to move a little bit away from the subject, but Mr. Sorkin, what do you think it would be like to be writing for a show like The West Wing in the current political climate?
I think it'd be a lot of fun. People have asked me if suddenly I was doing The West Wing today, what would I change to suit the current political climate, as you put it? The answer is not a thing. Not a thing. I would do the exact same show where we get to see and hear what it looks and sounds like when well-intentioned, thoughtful people with whom we may have differences of opinion, but whose intentions are unimpeachable, are working hard and are dedicated to public service. The whole idea behind The West Wing from the beginning was, instead of let's see what happens if instead of portraying our leaders as either Machiavellian or dolts, we show a very highly competent group of people who may slip on banana peels from time to time, but who we understand are waking up every morning with our best interests in mind, and they are hyper competent. So I would just keep doing that, and once a week we'd hear the sound of what a press conference should sound like,
Hi, Mariana from Esquire. So, Jessica, you're known for playing strong female characters and for advocating for women's equity. So, what would you advise to women to fight for the right causes in their everyday life?
For me, it's really important that people speak up. I think, Molly makes a lot of mistakes in this film, and I think the first mistake starts when he says, "Ugly dress, ugly shoes," and then the next time you see her, she says, "I went to the store and told them to get me something that looked nothing like myself." And she changed who she was to fit into what she thought she had to find success and to find power. And what I would say is just break the door down. Just wear the ugly dress, ugly shoes. Show up and make people listen to what you have to say rather than what you look like or how you present yourself physically. One thing I really respect about this film and what Aaron did and what Charlotta did with Molly is we listen to what she has to say. Even though she is wearing this persona, the camera doesn't fetishize her. So I think in the past, whenever we've seen a sexy movie like this, we have the shots of the camera going up the leg, or, you see Molly Bloom as her body, not as her person, and what she's actually saying. And this film, because it is a voiceover, and because we are with Molly the whole time, who she is and what she says they're the most important elements of the film and of the person. And so I would just tell everyone just to stay true to that and don't change yourself to try to fit into a society that's broken. Change the society that's broken.
Thank you so much. Hi there, Keith Whittier, Auto Life Magazine, Rogers Media. Two quick questions for both of you. Aaron, of course, this is your first directorial effort, but no stranger to being on sets. I wanted to know if there was anything through the process that surprised you or that you didn't expect, and how the process was for you as a first-time feature film director. And Jessica, for you, as my peer from Esquire just mentioned, you have this amazing resume of phenomenal roles, and with that I can say in confidence it's not a matter of if you'll win an Oscar, just a matter of when. I'm curious if you could speak to your selection process, because I honestly want you to choose my lottery numbers, because every role that you pick, you seem to hit it out of the park. So I was wondering if you could both comment on those things.
Okay, I would just say that the biggest thing that I learned doing this was how much I have to learn. I had plenty of respect for the murderer's row of directors that I'd worked with in the past. There's no lack of respect there. I have even more now. It's funny, all of them, from Mike Nichols to my first director was Rob Reiner on A Few Good Men. All of them at some point would say the same thing to me, which was when I directed my first movie, I didn't know anything. I just went to the set every day not knowing anything, and it's a miracle that the whole thing was put together. And I never believed them. I always thought, no, I don't know anything. You know something. And now I believe them. I went there not knowing anything except as a showrunner in television, you are a little bit closer to what a director in film is. I knew what I wanted, and I knew enough that to get it, you have to put phenomenal people in the right position and get them to understand what you're looking for, and never ever pretend to know more than you know. I'm like I said, I'm not done wanting to collaborate with great directors, but I'm also not done now directing. I've got a taste for it. I want to do better. I know a little bit more now. That is not a knock on Molly's game. I couldn't be more proud of Molly's game. There are things I can be smarter about. For instance, I'll give you one. For instance, never again will I give up on a take. Ever. And there were times that I did. When I was looking at it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, so, all right, you know, it's fine. I'm not going to use this shot anyway, and I can't stay here forever doing this. We do have to make our day. I'm never going to give up on a take again.
First of all, thank you for saying that. That's really nice of you to say. For me, my selection process has changed through my career, I guess my 6 years since my movies have come out. And now I'm really aware of what I'm putting out into the world. And if I'm part of the society, I'm part of the industry, I'm part of the problem, right? So what am I doing to contribute in a positive way, to move the needle in a positive way? And that to me means playing characters that are complicated, playing women that are complicated, playing women that aren't this angelic persona of perfection or just this sexy object of desire. I'm interested in playing characters, women, authentic women that I know in my life who make a lot of mistakes, who are noble sometimes, who are competitive sometimes, and who can get quite messy sometimes. And that to me right now is the most interesting roles, because I think when we can accept those roles in that dynamic with women, then women will know that they don't have to try to force themselves into an old-fashioned stereotype.
So, excuse me. So I've just been told that we are out of time. Thank you to everyone here in this room. Aaron and Jessica, thank you for starting the process and shooting in Toronto and then having the world premiere here. We are truly honored. Please give it up for Aaron and Jessica.
It's the best movie town in the world. It really is. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey You